Jake Morrison floated near the observation window of the International Space Station, watching Earth turn slowly below him. The blue and white marble had never looked more peaceful. He checked his watch and saw it was time for his shift monitoring the communication arrays. As he pushed off toward the control panel, something caught his eye in the darkness of space. Three massive shapes moved against the stars. They were bigger than anything humans had ever built. Jake blinked hard and looked again. The shapes were still there, growing larger as they approached Earth. His hand shook as he reached for the emergency communication button. Far across the galaxy, Admiral Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship. The Zephyrian Empire had sent him to investigate strange signals coming from a small blue planet. For 300 years, his people had expanded across the stars, adding world after world to their empire. This mission seemed routine. The planet showed signs of primitive electromagnetic activity, which meant another easy conquest. Vextar looked at the data streaming across his screens. The third planet from the local star had oxygen, water, and what appeared to be a developing civilization. His long fingers touched the control panel, and 3 Zephyrian warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel near the blue world. Jake's voice cracked as he spoke into the radio. "Houston, this is the ISS. We have 3 unidentified objects approaching Earth. They're huge. I repeat, we have contact with unknown vessels." The response came quickly from Mission Control, asking him to repeat and confirm. Jake described what he saw while the alien ships moved closer to Earth's orbit. On Earth, General Lisa Rodriguez received the call at the Pentagon. She had spent 20 years in the military, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. Within minutes, every space agency and military command center on the planet was tracking the 3 objects. Radar stations confirmed what Jake had seen. The ships were each over 5 miles long and unlike anything in Earth's technology. Dr. Alex Chun was working late in his laboratory at MIT when his quantum detection equipment started going crazy. The machines were picking up energy patterns that should not exist. The readings showed technology far beyond human understanding. Alex called his research team and told them to get to the lab immediately. Something impossible was happening. Admiral Vextar studied the primitive world below. His ship's sensors showed millions of the native creatures moving around on the surface. They had built basic cities and primitive flying machines. The electromagnetic signals his empire had detected came from simple communication devices. This would be another easy addition to the Zephyrian Empire. The Admiral activated his ship's communication system. He would follow standard procedure and give the natives one chance to surrender. If they refused, his ships would demonstrate their power until the primitives understood their situation. Vextar had done this 43 times before on 43 different worlds. The outcome was always the same. Jake watched in amazement as the lead alien ship began to glow. Suddenly, a beam of energy shot toward Earth. The beam did not hit the planet, but instead touched every satellite in orbit. One by one, Jake watched as communication satellites, weather monitors, and GPS systems went dark. The aliens had just cut off Earth's electronic eyes and ears with a single pulse. General Rodriguez stood in the Pentagon's command center as reports flooded in from around the world. Every satellite was offline. Communication networks were failing. The aliens had demonstrated their power without firing a shot at Earth itself. She knew this was a message. They were showing humanity how helpless they were against alien technology. The alien communication came through every remaining radio and television signal on Earth. The voice was cold and mechanical, translated by alien computers. Primitive creatures of the third planet, you will submit to the Zephyrian Empire. Resistance will result in your elimination. You have one solar rotation to surrender your world. Dr. Chun stared at his equipment as it recorded the alien transmission. The energy patterns were unlike anything he had ever seen. The aliens used quantum effects that human science barely understood, but there was something strange about the patterns. They were very complex but also very rigid. The alien technology seemed to follow strict rules without any variation. Jake grabbed his radio and tried to reach mission control, but only static came back. The space station was now alone, cut off from Earth by the alien attack on the satellites. He looked down at his home planet and wondered if he would ever see it the same way again. The peaceful blue marble had become a target. Admiral Vextar waited for the primitive response. In his experience, most species either surrendered immediately or tried one desperate attack before giving up. Either way, the outcome was always the same. The Zephyrian Empire would add another world to its collection, and the native population would serve their new masters. General Rodriguez called an emergency meeting with world leaders. They had less than 24 hours to respond to the alien ultimatum. Every military expert agreed that fighting was hopeless. The aliens had technology centuries ahead of Earth's best weapons. But Rodriguez had spent her career studying warfare, and she knew that sometimes the impossible became possible when people refused to give up. Dr. Chun worked through the night, analyzing every second of the alien energy patterns. He had a feeling that understanding this technology might be humanity's only hope. The aliens were powerful, but they might not be perfect. Every system had weaknesses, and Alex was determined to find them before it was too late. The 24 hours passed without a response from Earth that satisfied Admiral Vextar. World leaders had tried to negotiate, asking for more time and offering to discuss terms. The alien commanders saw this as typical primitive behavior. They always tried to bargain when they should simply surrender. Vextar gave the order to begin the harvesting operation. 4 massive structures dropped from the Zephyrian ships toward Earth's surface. Each one was the size of a city block and moved with impossible grace through the atmosphere. The first landed in downtown New York, crushing buildings as it touched down. The second hit London, the third landed in Tokyo, and the fourth came down in Moscow. Within minutes, these harvesting machines began their work. Dr. Kate Sullivan was giving a lecture at Cambridge University when the alien machine landed in London. The ground shook so hard that everyone in her classroom fell down. Through the windows, she could see a massive gray tower rising above the city skyline. Strange energy waves pulsed out from the structure every few seconds. Marine Sergeant Danny Walsh was on leave in Chicago when he felt the change happen. A wave of something invisible passed over the city, and suddenly people around him started acting strange. They stopped talking, stopped moving with purpose, and began walking slowly toward the alien machines. Their eyes became empty and distant. Danny felt the wave wash over him too, but somehow he stayed alert and aware. The neural dampening field spread out from each harvesting machine in expanding circles. Most humans caught in these fields lost their ability to think clearly or act independently. They became docile and obedient, walking calmly toward the alien structures where they were loaded onto transport ships. The Zephyrians had used this technology on dozens of worlds. It made conquest much easier when the natives could not organize resistance, but something was wrong with the Earth operation. Admiral Vextar received reports from his ground commanders that roughly 10% of the human population remained unaffected by the neural dampening. These humans continued to fight, hide, and cause problems for the harvesting operation. This had never happened before. Every other species had been completely controlled by the dampening fields. Danny gathered unaffected humans he found hiding in Chicago's ruins. Most were confused and scared, but they were still thinking clearly. There was Lisa Park, a police officer who had been directing traffic when the wave hit. There was old Ben Carter, a veteran who had been feeding pigeons. In the park, there was young Amy Torres, a pilot who had been walking to work at the airport. Dr. Sullivan found herself trapped in London as the alien machine began processing humans like cattle. She hid in the university's basement with a group of students and professors who had somehow avoided the neural effects. They could hear the mechanical sounds of the harvesting operation above them. Sullivan realized she was witnessing the systematic destruction of human civilization. Commander Ryan Brooks was deep underground in the Cheyenne Mountain complex when the invasion began. The military facility's heavy shielding protected everyone. Inside from the neural dampening fields, Brooks took command of the remaining free military forces and began coordinating with resistance groups around the world. Radio communications were spotty, but he could reach small groups of survivors in major cities. The Zephyrian ground forces moved with efficient precision through the paralyzed cities. They were tall, thin beings with gray skin and large black eyes. Their movements were graceful but mechanical, like they followed programmed routines rather than thinking creatively. They had energy weapons that could cut through any human armor or building material. Danny learned to fight the aliens using hit-and-run tactics. The Zephyrians expected organized military resistance with vehicles and heavy weapons. They did not know how to respond to a small group of humans with hunting rifles attacking from abandoned buildings. When the aliens sent patrols to search the ruins, Danny's group would attack them and disappear before reinforcements arrived. Dr. Sullivan began studying the alien technology from her hiding place. She used portable equipment to record energy patterns and communication signals. The more she learned, the more she realized that the Zephyrians were following a very specific plan. They had done this exact same process on other worlds. Their technology was advanced but inflexible. The harvesting machines worked day and night, processing thousands of humans every hour. The controlled humans walked peacefully into the machines and were loaded onto transport ships that carried them to the orbiting Zephyrian vessels. No one knew what happened to them after that, but the transport ships returned empty and ready for more passengers. Amy Torres found an abandoned crop duster at a small airport outside Chicago. She had been a commercial pilot before the invasion and knew how to fly almost anything. The little plane was too primitive for the alien sensors to track properly. Torres began using it to scout alien positions and drop improvised bombs on their patrols. Brooks received reports from around the world that painted a grim picture. The aliens controlled every major city and were systematically emptying them of human life. Military resistance had collapsed within hours of the invasion. Only scattered groups of immune humans continued to fight, and they were vastly outnumbered. But Brooks also noticed something important in the reports. The aliens seemed confused by human behavior. Their responses to resistance attacks were slow and predictable. They used overwhelming force against obvious targets but ignored subtle threats. The Zephyrians fought like they expected humans to behave in specific ways. Danny's group discovered that certain humans were more likely to be immune to the neural dampening. People whose families had survived major diseases in the past seemed to resist the alien mind control better than others. Veterans, emergency workers, and people who had lived through disasters were also more likely to stay free. It was like some humans had natural defenses that the aliens had not expected. Dr. Sullivan made an important discovery while hiding in the university basement. The alien communication signals used quantum entanglement technology, but the signals followed very rigid patterns. The Zephyrians seemed to use the same protocols and procedures on every world they conquered. Their strength was also their weakness. They were powerful but predictable. Admiral Vextar reviewed the progress reports from Earth with growing frustration. The harvesting operation was behind schedule because of the unexpected resistance. Small groups of humans continued to attack his forces and disrupt the collection process. This had never happened before in the Empire's 300-year expansion. The Admiral decided to increase the pressure on the resistant humans. He ordered his ships to begin destroying any buildings that might hide survivors. Energy beams from orbit turned city blocks into smoking ruins. The message was clear: surrender or watch your world burn. But the humans did not surrender. They adapted, moved deeper underground, and kept fighting. Brooks realized that humanity's only hope was to learn from these early battles and find ways to exploit alien weaknesses. The Zephyrians were winning, but they were not invincible. Every day the Resistance survived was another day to study the enemy and plan for a counterattack that might save what remained of the human race. 2 weeks after the invasion began, the human resistance had learned important lessons about fighting the Zephyrians. Tony Ricci, a former Navy SEAL, discovered the first major weakness in alien technology while hiding in the ruins of Boston. He had been trying to attack an alien patrol with a stolen energy weapon when the device stopped working. In desperation, he grabbed an old crossbow from a sporting goods store and fired a simple steel bolt at the nearest Zephyrian. The bolt went straight through the alien's personal shield and killed it instantly. Tony could not believe what he had seen. The most advanced defensive technology in the galaxy had been defeated by a weapon that humans had used hundreds of years ago. He quickly tested his discovery with improvised spears and slingshots. Every primitive weapon worked perfectly against alien shields that could stop missiles and energy beams. Dr. Alex Chen had been working in an underground laboratory for weeks, trying to understand how Zephyrian technology functioned. His team of surviving scientists had managed to salvage pieces of alien equipment from destroyed patrol vehicles. The breakthrough came when Chun realized that alien shields were designed to defend against specific types of threats. They could identify and stop any weapon that used advanced technology, but they ignored anything too primitive to be considered dangerous. Word of Tony's discovery spread through the resistance network that Commander Brooks had organized. Humans around the world began making crossbows, spears, and simple explosives from materials they could find in the ruins. Hardware stores and sporting goods shops became more valuable than military armories. The aliens' greatest advantage had become their greatest weakness. Amy Torres modified her crop duster to carry barrels filled with gasoline and scrap metal. She would fly low over alien positions and roll the barrels out the cargo door. When they hit the ground and exploded, the aliens' shields did nothing to protect them from flying pieces of junk. Her primitive bombing runs were more effective than the military's most advanced missiles had been. Admiral Vextar received increasingly disturbing reports from his ground commanders. Human resistance was growing stronger instead of weaker. The primitives were using weapons so basic that Zephyrian defensive systems did not recognize them as threats. In 300 years of conquest, the Empire had never encountered anything like this situation. Danny Walsh organized his Chicago resistance group into hunting parties that tracked alien patrols through the city ruins. They used homemade spears with steel points and simple bows made from car parts. The Zephyrians moved in predictable patterns and never learned to watch for primitive ambush tactics. Danny's people could kill an entire alien patrol and disappear before reinforcements arrived. Dr. Sullivan made another important discovery while studying alien communication patterns. The Zephyrians used quantum entanglement networks to coordinate their operations, but these networks could be disrupted by specific electromagnetic frequencies. She began building devices that could interfere with alien communications using parts from old radios and television sets. The Resistance faced constant challenges as the aliens adapted to some human tactics. When Zephyrian patrols started wearing heavier armor that could stop crossbow bolts, humans began using explosives made from fertilizer and diesel fuel. When the aliens tried to track Resistance movements with aerial drones, humans learned to move through subway tunnels and abandoned sewers. Tony's team in Boston discovered that alien technology had other unexpected vulnerabilities. Zephyrian energy weapons stopped working when they got wet, and their vehicles could not function properly in extreme cold or heat. Humans began using water balloons, ice, and even hot coffee as weapons against the invaders. Dr. Chun's research team made a breakthrough when they successfully reverse-engineered a piece of alien communication equipment. They learned that all Zephyrian technology was connected through quantum networks that shared information instantly across vast distances. If they could create a virus to spread through these networks, they might be able to disrupt alien operations. On a massive scale, Brooks coordinated resistance activities from his underground command center, but he knew that small-scale attacks were not enough to defeat the invasion. The aliens still controlled most of the planet and continued to harvest millions of humans every day. The Resistance needed a way to strike at the alien ships in orbit, but they had no weapons that could reach that far. The solution came from an unexpected source. Jake Morrison, still trapped on the International Space Station, had been watching the invasion from orbit and studying alien ship movements. He discovered that the Zephyrian vessels followed very predictable patrol routes and schedules. If the Resistance could find a way to reach orbit, they might be able to attack the alien ships when they were most vulnerable. Amy Torres volunteered for the most dangerous mission yet attempted by the Resistance. Using parts salvaged from destroyed aircraft, she and a team of mechanics built a rocket-powered aircraft that could reach the edge of space. The plan was to carry a primitive but powerful explosive device close enough to one of the alien ships to cause significant damage. Dr. Sullivan's electromagnetic disruption devices proved successful in small-scale tests. When Resistance fighters activated them near alien patrols, the Zephyrians lost contact with their command ships and began making mistakes. The aliens would fire at shadows, walk into obvious traps, and sometimes even attack each other when their coordination systems failed. The psychological impact of successful Resistance operations spread beyond the immune humans. Some people under neural dampening began showing signs of awareness when they witnessed aliens being defeated by primitive human weapons. The dampening field seemed to weaken when the Zephyrians appeared vulnerable rather than invincible. Admiral Vextar faced a situation that no Zephyrian commander had ever encountered. The primitive humans were not only resisting conquest but actually winning battles against advanced alien technology. His superiors in the Empire demanded explanations that he could not provide. The invasion was becoming a disaster that threatened the reputation of Zephyrian military supremacy. Tony's teams began teaching other Resistance groups how to make effective primitive weapons. Former soldiers worked with historians and archaeologists to recreate ancient human warfare techniques that the aliens could not counter. Medieval siege weapons, Roman tactics, and Native American hunting methods became the foundation of humanity's defense strategy. Dr. Chun realized that the quantum virus project might be the key to victory, but it would require access to a major alien communication hub. The harvesting machines in the occupied cities were all connected to the quantum network. If a Resistance team could plant the virus device inside one of these machines, it might spread to every Zephyrian system on Earth and beyond. Brooks began planning the most ambitious Resistance operation yet attempted. Multiple teams would attack harvesting machines simultaneously in different cities, using primitive weapons to fight through alien defenses while Dr. Chun's team planted the quantum virus. The mission would either free humanity or result in the complete destruction of the resistance movement. The tide of war was beginning to turn, but the aliens still had overwhelming advantages in numbers and technology. The next phase of the conflict would determine whether human ingenuity and determination could overcome the most powerful military force in the galaxy. The breakthrough that changed everything happened in London when Dr. Sullivan's team captured a living Zephyrian commander. The alien had been separated from its patrol during one of Tony's coordinated attacks using primitive weapons. When the Pinfen commander's energy weapon failed in the rain and its armor was pierced by a simple steel spear, the resistance fighters managed to take it alive instead of killing it. Dr. Sullivan studied the captured alien for 3 days, learning more about Zephyrian psychology and military doctrine than months of previous research had revealed. The commander, whose name translated roughly to Kexfer, was confused and frightened by its capture. In 300 years of galactic conquest, no Zephyrian had ever been taken prisoner by primitives. Through careful questioning, Sullivan learned that the Zephyrian Empire operated under extremely rigid protocols. Every invasion followed the same pattern because it had always worked before. The Empire had conquered 43 worlds using identical tactics, and their military doctrine had no provisions for adapting to unexpected resistance. When primitives fought back successfully, the Zephyrian command structure simply could not process what was happening. Kexver revealed something even more important during interrogation. The Empire maintained control over conquered species using neural dampening technology, but if a species ever successfully resisted for more than 30 days, it triggered automatic sterilization protocols. Admiral Vextar had already requested permission to destroy Earth completely rather than continue the failed harvesting operation. This information reached Commander Brooks just as he was finalizing plans for the coordinated quantum virus attack. The Resistance had maybe a week before Zephyrian battle fleets arrived to turn Earth into a burned cinder. Every human still alive would die unless they could somehow defeat the 3 ships already in orbit. Jake Morrison had been working on his own plan from the International Space Station. Using emergency supplies and equipment salvaged from disabled satellites, he had been building a crude but powerful electromagnetic pulse device. The plan was desperate and would probably kill him, but Jake realized it might be the only way to disable the alien ships long enough for the ground resistance to strike. Dr. Chan's quantum virus was ready for deployment, but the team needed to plant it in multiple harvesting machines simultaneously to ensure it would spread through the entire Zephyrian network before the aliens could isolate and stop it. 5 separate resistance teams had volunteered for suicide missions in New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow, and Chicago. Amy Torres had successfully completed her first orbital attack mission, using her rocket-powered aircraft to damage one of the alien ships with a primitive explosive device. The aliens had not expected an attack from such a basic vehicle, and their defense systems had ignored her approach completely. Now she was preparing for an even more dangerous mission to plant Jake's electromagnetic pulse device directly against the lead alien ship. The coordinated attack began at exactly midnight Greenwich Mean Time. In 5 cities around the world, resistance teams armed with crossbows, spears, and homemade explosives launched simultaneous assaults on the massive harvesting machines. The aliens defending these installations were caught completely off guard by the primitive but effective human weapons. Danny Walsh led the Chicago team through the sewers beneath the alien harvesting machine. His fighters carried steel-tipped spears and bottles filled with gasoline and metal fragments. The Zephyrian defenders could not understand why their advanced sensors failed to detect the approaching humans or why their energy shields offered no protection against such basic weapons. Tony's team in Boston created a diversion by attacking alien patrols throughout the city using medieval siege tactics. They had built catapults and ballistas from construction equipment and were hurling chunks of concrete and steel at alien positions. The Zephyrian commanders wasted valuable time and resources responding to these obvious attacks while the real assault teams approached their targets. Dr. Sullivan's group in London had the most difficult mission because they needed to capture the harvesting machine's central computer intact. They fought their way through alien defenders using primitive weapons while carrying delicate electronic equipment. Sullivan herself had to manually install Dr. Chun's quantum virus device while under fire from Zephyrian energy weapons. In orbit, Amy Torres piloted her modified aircraft toward the alien flagship where Admiral Vextar was coordinating the defense of the harvesting operations. Her primitive aircraft was invisible to advanced alien sensors, but she had to fly through fields of deadly energy fire to reach her target. Jake Morrison prepared to detonate his electromagnetic pulse device as soon as Amy was clear of the blast zone. The resistance attack succeeded beyond all expectations. Human fighters using bows, spears, and crude explosives overwhelmed alien defenses that had been designed to stop advanced military forces. The quantum virus began spreading through Zephyrian communication networks, causing system failures and coordination breakdowns across all three orbiting ships. Admiral Vextar realized too late that he had completely underestimated human capabilities. The primitives were not fighting like any species the Empire had ever encountered. They used weapons and tactics that Zephyrian technology simply could not counter effectively. Worse, they seemed to thrive on chaos and adapt to changing conditions faster than alien systems could compensate. The electromagnetic pulse that Jake Morrison detonated near the alien flagship had effects far beyond what anyone had expected. The pulse not only disabled the three ships in Earth orbit, but sent a feedback wave through the quantum communication network that connected every Zephyrian vessel in the galaxy. Ships thousands of light years away suddenly lost power and communication as the pulse propagated through their quantum entanglement systems. On Earth, the neural dampening fields that had controlled millions of humans began failing as the harvesting machines lost power. People who had been walking like zombies toward alien processing centers suddenly stopped, looked around in confusion, and began to remember who they were. The liberation of Earth's population happened in a matter of minutes as the alien control systems collapsed, but the victory came with a terrible price. Jake Morrison died when his electromagnetic pulse device overloaded the space station's power systems. Amy Torres barely escaped the explosion that crippled the alien flagship, and her aircraft was too damaged to return safely to Earth. Danny Walsh's team suffered heavy casualties fighting through the Chicago harvesting machine, and many other resistance fighters had given their lives to plant the quantum virus. Commander Brooks received reports from around the world that the alien occupation was collapsing. The three Zephyrian ships were drifting powerless in orbit, their crews either dead or trapped without life support. The harvesting machines had shut down, and alien ground forces were retreating in disorder. Earth was free, but the cost of freedom had been enormous. Dr. Chun monitored the quantum virus as it spread through captured alien communication equipment. The virus was not only disabling Zephyrian ships near Earth, but was propagating throughout the Empire's entire fleet. Reports from deep space monitoring stations suggested that alien vessels were going dark across dozens of star systems. The most unexpected consequence of the human victory was the effect on other conquered species throughout the galaxy. The neural dampening technology that kept 43 different worlds under Zephyrian control depended on the same quantum networks that humans had just destroyed. Billions of enslaved beings across the galaxy were suddenly free to think and act for themselves for the first time in centuries. Admiral Vextar dying aboard his powerless flagship, managed to send one final message to the Zephyrian homeworlds. Before his ship's systems failed completely. His warning was simple but chilling for an empire that had never known defeat. Do not underestimate the humans. They are not like other primitives. They are chaos itself, and chaos cannot be conquered. The electromagnetic pulse that disabled the Zephyrian ships near Earth had consequences that reached far beyond what anyone had imagined. Within hours of the attack, deep space monitoring stations began detecting massive explosions in energy, signatures from distant star systems. The quantum virus had spread through the Empire's communication networks like wildfire, and alien fleets were going dark across the galaxy. But humanity's celebration was cut short when Dr. Chun detected new energy signatures approaching Earth's solar system. The quantum pulse had not only disabled nearby Zephyrian ships, but had also sent an automatic distress signal to the Empire's core worlds. A massive battle fleet was now traveling toward Earth at faster-than-light speeds, and it would arrive. Within days, Commander Brooks studied the incoming intelligence reports with growing dread. The approaching fleet contained over 200 warships, each one larger and more powerful than the 3 vessels that had originally invaded Earth. This was not another harvesting operation but a full military response designed to destroy every living thing on the planet. The surviving Zephyrian commander, Kexver, confirmed Brooks' worst fears when Dr. Sullivan questioned it about the approaching fleet. The Empire had protocols for dealing with species that successfully resisted conquest. Rather than risk the rebellion spreading to other conquered worlds, they would sterilize the entire planet and use it as an example to discourage future resistance. Amy Torres had survived her orbital mission but was stranded in space aboard a damaged alien shuttle she had managed to steal during the confusion of the electromagnetic pulse attack. From her position near the disabled Zephyrian flagship, she could see the approaching enemy fleet as it dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system. The sight of so many massive warships filled her with terror. Tony Ritchie gathered the surviving resistance fighters in Boston and began preparing for what everyone knew would be humanity's final battle. They had proven that primitive weapons could defeat advanced alien technology, but the approaching fleet would not make the same mistakes as the first invasion force. The new Zephyrian commander would have studied human tactics and adapted accordingly. Dr. Chun worked frantically to modify the quantum virus for a second attack, but the aliens had already begun implementing countermeasures. The virus that had been so effective against the first wave of ships was being blocked by new security protocols. The approaching fleet had isolated their quantum networks to prevent further contamination. Danny Walsh organized the defense of Chicago using every lesson learned during the resistance campaign. His fighters had become experts at using primitive weapons and guerrilla tactics, but they were still just a few thousand humans facing an army that could destroy continents. The odds were hopeless, but Danny had never learned how to surrender. Jake Morrison's sacrifice had disabled the first alien fleet, but his electromagnetic pulse device was a one-time weapon that could not be recreated quickly enough to stop the approaching armada. The resistance needed a new plan, and they needed it fast. Every hour brought the enemy closer to Earth and humanity's extinction. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Amy Torres, still orbiting Earth in her stolen alien shuttle, discovered that the disabled Zephyrian ships contained detailed information about Empire military doctrine and technology. The aliens had never expected their ships to be captured, so they had not bothered to encrypt their databases properly. Dr. Sullivan analyzed the captured data and made a startling discovery. The Zephyrian Empire's greatest strength was also its greatest weakness. Every ship in their fleet was connected to a central command network that coordinated their actions with perfect precision. If that network could be disrupted or hijacked, the entire fleet would become vulnerable to attack. The plan that emerged from this discovery was more desperate than anything the Resistance had attempted before. A small team would need to board the flagship of the approaching fleet and plant a modified quantum virus directly into the command network. The virus would not just disable the ships, but would turn their own weapons against each other. Commander Brooks realized that the mission would be a suicide run for whoever attempted it. The flagship would be heavily defended, and the team would have no way to escape once the virus was planted. But it was humanity's only chance to avoid complete extinction. He began selecting volunteers from the most experienced resistance fighters. Amy Torres volunteered immediately for the boarding mission, using her knowledge of alien ship systems and her access to the stolen shuttle. Tony Ritchie and Danny Walsh also volunteered, along with Dr. Chun, who would be needed to install the virus. Dr. Sullivan would remain on Earth to coordinate the attack and ensure the virus spread properly through the enemy network. The preparation for the final battle took place while the Zephyrian fleet moved steadily closer to Earth. Every remaining human on the planet worked to gather weapons, supplies, and improvise spacecraft for what they all knew would be the last fight. If the boarding mission failed, the planet would be sterilized within hours. The Resistance had learned to build effective weapons from primitive materials, but they needed spacecraft capable of reaching the alien flagship. Amy's stolen shuttle could carry a small team, but they would need a diversion to get close enough to board the enemy ship. Every flyable aircraft on Earth was prepared for a final desperate assault. As the Zephyrian fleet entered Earth's orbital space, the true scale of humanity's situation became clear. The alien ship stretched across the sky like a dark cloud, blotting out the stars. Each vessel was armed with weapons capable of destroying cities, and there were enough ships to reduce Earth's surface to molten rock within minutes. The new Zephyrian commander, Admiral Zekthar, had studied the reports from the first invasion and adapted his tactics accordingly. His ships maintained strict communication protocols to prevent virus attacks, and his weapon systems were programmed to target any object larger than a baseball. The humans would not catch him off guard with primitive weapons and guerrilla tactics, but Admiral Zekthar had made one crucial error in his planning. He had studied human military tactics and technological capabilities, but he had not understood the human spirit. The approaching battle would not be won by superior weapons or advanced strategy. It would be decided by humanity's willingness to sacrifice everything for the chance to remain free. The final assault began when every remaining aircraft on Earth launched simultaneously toward the alien fleet. Converted civilian planes, military jets damaged but still flyable, and even helicopters loaded with explosives rose from hidden airfields around the planet. Most would be destroyed within minutes, but their sacrifice would create the chaos needed for the boarding team to reach its target. Amy Torres piloted her stolen shuttle through the holocaust of energy weapons fire that erupted as the human aircraft attacked the alien fleet. The primitive planes were being destroyed by the hundreds, but their presence was overwhelming the Zephyrian targeting systems. The aliens had expected organized military resistance, not a suicidal charge by every flying machine on the planet. Tony Ritchie and Danny Walsh prepared their weapons for the boarding assault while Dr. Chun checked the modified quantum virus one final time. They all knew this was a one-way mission, but they also knew that failure meant the death of every human being on Earth. The weight of their species' survival rested on their ability to reach the alien flagship and complete their mission. Shuttle shook violently as alien energy weapons struck its hull, but Amy's piloting skills and the confusion created by the human aircraft swarm allowed them to reach the flagship's docking bay. The boarding team prepared to fight their way through Whatever defenses waited inside, knowing that humanity's future depended on their success in the next few crucial minutes. Amy Torres brought the stolen shuttle into the alien flagship's docking bay while energy weapons fire lit up the space around them. The moment they touched down, Tony Ritchie and Danny Walsh burst from the shuttle with primitive weapons ready. The Zephyrian defenders in the docking bay were caught completely off guard by the sight of humans, armed with crossbows and steel-tipped spears charging toward them. The aliens' energy shields were useless against the primitive weapons, just as they had been during the ground battles on Earth. Tony's crossbow bolts punched through alien armor like it was made of paper, while Danny used a sharpened steel rod like a spear to take down 3 Zephyrians before they could react. Dr. Chun followed behind them carrying the modified quantum virus device in a simple backpack. The corridors of the alien flagship were designed for beings much larger than humans, which made movement difficult but also provided cover from enemy fire. The team fought their way deeper into the ship while alarms blared and emergency lights flashed. Every Zephyrian they encountered fell to weapons their advanced technology could not defend against. Admiral Zekthar watched the boarding action from his command bridge with growing disbelief. The primitive humans were cutting through his elite guards like they were children. His weapons officers reported that defensive systems could not target the human weapons because they registered as harmless debris rather than military threats. Dr. Chun's knowledge of alien technology, gained from weeks of studying captured equipment, guided the team through the ship's maze-like interior toward the central command core. They had to move fast because even primitive weapons would not protect them once the aliens adapted their tactics to deal with the unexpected threat. The fighting grew more intense as they approached the ship's heart. The Zephyrians began using area effect weapons that could harm the humans regardless of their primitive equipment. Tony took a glancing blow from an energy weapon that left his left arm useless, but he continued firing his crossbow with his right hand. Danny's improvised spear broke against alien armor, so he picked up a piece of metal debris and used it as a club. Amy Torres had stayed with the shuttle to keep their escape route open, but she could see through the ship's viewports that the battle outside was going badly for humanity. The swarm of human aircraft was being systematically destroyed by the alien fleet. Soon the diversion would end, and the full attention of the enemy would focus on stopping the boarding team. The team reached the central command core, just as the last human aircraft outside were being destroyed. Dr. Chun began installing the quantum virus while Tony and Danny held off waves of alien defenders. The installation process required precise work that could not be rushed, and every second brought more enemy soldiers toward their position. Commander Brooks monitored the mission from Earth, watching as the human aircraft swarm was wiped out. The Resistance had thrown everything they had at the alien fleet, and it was not enough. If the boarding team failed, there would be nothing left to stop the Zephyrians from sterilizing the planet. Dr. Chun finished installing the virus and activated it, but nothing seemed to happen at first. The alien ship continued to function normally, and enemy soldiers continued to attack their position. For a terrifying moment, Chun thought the virus had failed to work. Then the ship's lights began to flicker, and the enemy weapons fire became erratic. The quantum virus spread through the flagship systems like lightning, and from there it jumped to every other ship in the fleet through their command network connections. Within minutes, Zephyrian vessels throughout the battle group began experiencing system failures and communication breakdowns. The precise coordination that made the alien fleet so deadly collapsed into chaos. But the virus did more than just disable the ships. Dr. Chun had programmed it to turn the aliens' own weapons against them, and now the fleet began firing on itself. Massive energy beams intended to destroy Earth instead struck other Zephyrian vessels. The orderly battle formation dissolved into a free-for-all as ships attacked their own allies. Tony. Ricci died holding the corridor that led to the command core, his body pierced by multiple energy weapons, but his crossbow still firing until the very end. Danny Walsh fell beside him, using his last breath to throw a crude spear that took down the alien soldier who had killed Tony. Their sacrifice bought Dr. Chen the final seconds he needed to complete the virus upload. Admiral Zekthar realized what was happening just as his own ship's weapons turned toward the vessel next to his. The humans had not just boarded his flagship to plant a virus. They had turned the entire Zephyrian fleet into a weapon against itself. His last command was to evacuate the fleet, but the quantum virus had already spread too far to be stopped. Amy. Torres and Dr. Chen fought their way back to the shuttle as the alien flagship began tearing itself apart. The ship's own weapons were firing at its vital systems, and explosions echoed through the corridors. They reached the docking bay just as the shuttle's hull was punctured by debris from a nearby explosion. The stolen shuttle barely held together long enough to get them away from the flagship before it exploded in a burst of light that could be seen from Earth's surface. All around them, the Zephyrian fleet was destroying itself as the quantum virus turned every ship into an enemy of its neighbors. The greatest military force in galactic history was committing suicide. Dr. Chen and Amy Torres made it back to Earth. In the damaged shuttle, crash landing in what had once been New York City, they were the only survivors of the boarding mission, but their sacrifice had saved humanity from extinction. The alien fleet was gone, reduced to scattered debris drifting through space, but the victory had consequences that reached far beyond Earth's solar system. The quantum virus had not just destroyed the fleet near Earth, it had spread through the Empire's communication networks to every Zephyrian vessel in the galaxy. Hundreds of thousands of alien ships were either destroyed or disabled as the virus turned their own systems against them. Commander Brooks received reports from deep space monitoring stations that confirmed the impossible. The Zephyrian Empire, which had ruled 43 worlds for 3 centuries, was collapsing. Their fleets were destroying themselves, their communication networks were down, and their ability to maintain control over conquered species was gone. On worlds throughout the galaxy, species that had been enslaved by neural dampening technology for generations suddenly found themselves free to think and act independently. The same quantum networks that had been used to control them had carried the human virus to every corner of the Empire. Rebellions erupted on dozens of worlds as newly freed populations turned against their Zephyrian masters. Dr. Sullivan established research centers to study captured alien technology and develop defenses against future invasions. Humanity had won this war, but the galaxy was full of other threats that might prove even more dangerous than the Zephyrians. The species that had almost destroyed them was now scattered and powerless, but other empires existed beyond the known stars. The cost of victory was enormous. Millions of humans had died during the invasion and the final battle. Entire cities lay in ruins, and much of human civilization would need to be rebuilt from scratch. But humanity had proven something that no other species in the galaxy had ever demonstrated. They could not be conquered, enslaved, or destroyed by any force that underestimated their determination to remain free. Amy Torres was promoted to captain of humanity's first interstellar exploration vessel, built using a combination of human engineering and captured alien technology. Her mission was to make contact with the species that had been freed from Zephyrian rule and help establish a new galactic alliance based on freedom, rather than conquest. The final entry in Commander Brooks' war diary served as both a memorial to the fallen and a warning to any other species that might threaten Earth. They came expecting to find another primitive world to add to their collection. Instead, they found something they had never encountered before: a species that had spent millions of years learning how to fight, survive, and never surrender. They discovered Earth. They should have left it alone. The war was over, but humanity's journey to the stars was just beginning. Earth had become the center of a new galactic civilization built on the principle that no species should ever bow to tyrants. The humans who had defeated the mightiest empire in the galaxy, with crossbows and determination, would now carry that same spirit to distant worlds, ensuring that freedom would spread wherever they traveled.